It's recording. So, welcome everyone. Today is the 25th of May 2023. This is the fifth test summit we have for Prometheus this year. As per usual, if you want to participate without being seen, feel more than welcome to switch off your video and or your mic, and you can just drop stuff in chat if you so choose, or drop stuff into the meeting notes. I'm also going to link them here. Also feel invited to put yourselves into the attendance tracker if you want to be persisted. If not, also totally fine. If you drop your email address into chat, I can add you as an editor for the doc. We follow the code of conduct, and let's get going. Philip is first with, I already forgot, Metrics Explorer.
Yeah, so this is kind of a feature that we've been wanting in Prometheus for a while. There's no good way to do any metrics discovery in Prometheus. There are several APIs like the series API that gives you back like raw series. There's also like a cardinality or TSDB status API that gives you back some metrics by cardinality, some estimates and stuff like that. But what's really interesting is what a lot of vendors are doing, where they allow you to explore metrics by name, and then they give you all of the labels that the metric has and all of the values or the number of values per label. So I was wondering if there's room for something like that in Prometheus. I know that it might be expensive to render this page, but setting aside the performance implications, would there be any interest in having a feature like this in Prometheus? And if you open here the issue, the link to the issue, there's also a screenshot of how like a metrics explorer looks like in, I think this is a screenshot from Datadog. But yeah, as I said, a bunch of other vendors have something similar.
So yeah, I personally think that we should actually have that kind of feature in Prometheus, because it's just awesome when you are looking for metrics to have that information more available than with the autocomplete. So I can see the added value of that. I mean, when we removed the list of all the series that we have in Prometheus, users actually complained about it, and we kind of had to find a solution back. But I think a proper solution like Metrics Explorer would make a lot of sense.
Actually, in Prometheus, there is a Metrics Explorer already, and I think it's pretty good. And we should just move it to Prometheus and done. That should not be super hard.
Yeah, I know that Julius wanted to move some of the Prometheus features into Prometheus directly. So yeah, I guess that we could ping him and see if he has any status update about that.
Well, the idea was more to provide Prometheus as a package and then import it in Prometheus, or export it from Prometheus and import it back in Prometheus. We just have to choose a direction, let's say, and yeah, it's done, more or less.
How does Promlines get this information? Yeah, as I mentioned, it might be like if you have a bunch of metrics in Prometheus, it might be expensive to use the existing APIs and then like reconstruct the data. Does Promlines use the series API?
But I think so. I'm not entirely sure, but I think so. And so it uses it to display the list of metrics, but not entirely. Then you have a local search to filter it, and it uses a fuzzy algorithm. And then you have a button to display the list of labels per metrics, but you have to click on it each time. It also contacts the metadata API to get the description of the metrics. But again, the metadata API It's only if you have less than 10,000 metrics, I think. It's a hardcode limitation, but it can be modified. Because the metadata API is super slow to respond when you have too much metrics, basically.
I'm also wondering if we do this in Prometheus itself, is there more information that we can get from TSDB about things like cardinality, in a time frame, recent cardinality, something like that, right? Where we could add additional information that just isn't available through the APIs right now.
So anyway, if we do that in Prometheus, it will use the API. So we would need to increase the API with new information. But yeah, I think there is probably room to get more insight into the TSDB for those metrics, because yeah, Promlens now is working against any Prometheus server, so it has to use the existing APIs. But indeed, if we want to do something directly in Prometheus, we might find better APIs to get more insights.
And I'm wondering if we are doing that, if it will work in Thanos. Because the cardinality is higher in Thanos, because it will contact much more Prometheus.
So as long as we have, a reasonable API, we can probably find a good solution in Thanos as well. And the serious API is very verbose and is also like very repetitive. It will tell you, it repeats label names, label values, all that stuff, and this is why it's currently very expensive in Thanos. And I think it will also be expensive in a big Prometheus setup.
Yeah.
The gut feeling is we already have consensus. It's A, we want it. B, we must make certain there is no performance impact and no impact on getting the alerts out. And C, we might need new API for this.
Actually, even if we have a performance issue, we should do it.
Yeah, I think such an explorer itself could be like, it has a different tolerance for slowness than trying to run a query.
Yeah, I think so.
I think the only caveat is the Explorer should maybe not be interfering with the, scraping performance or things like that. So I think that's the only kind of source of problems that can happen. Like you open the Explorer and then like everything freezes and Prometheus can't scrape.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, but like for an Explorer like this, I would be I would be happier to have it and have it slowly than to not have it at all, right? And then if we see, oh, this particular edge case is super slow, but maybe we can find this information more efficiently by asking TSDB about it directly or whatever, or by keeping track of it at scrape time, whatever it takes, right? Once we have it, we can see the edge cases, we can see the slow parts, and we can make it better.
But if we have the cardinality from the TSDB, we could define a limit, and if you are higher than this cardinality limit, you can't use anymore the Matrix Explorer because it will impact the performance of Prometheus itself. We could define such limit. It's but even if it's configurable, I mean, if you want to change it, be my guest. But it will be at your own risk.
Sounds like a valid trade-off, where we basically start defensively and either increase the limit over time, the default, or just leave it, but tell people how to increase it if they want to.
Yeah, I mean, we can also explore being more fuzzy. Like I think in a metrics explorer, for example, we could be more fuzzy about like, is this metric actually like right now still there, right? We may not have to look at the actual time series and just see, well, it's in the index. That probably means, or like it's in the index for the most recent block. Okay, fine, that's probably good enough, right? And that way we could potentially save a lot of processing by integrating the two more tightly than is currently possible. Yeah, so I would be in favor of just adding it and then iterating from there.
Yeah, me too.
Okay. I lost my tab. We want to support this. We will have a configure limit to prevent high impact, consensus. We want to support this. We will have a configure limit to prevent impact on alerting and or scraping performance by default. We will explore new API for this. All agreed? Anyone disagreeing?
Agree.
So next one. This is the game of who we have on the call, depending on votes. No votes actually. Oh no, there's a higher one. Community channels. Björn, the floor is yours. There we go.
I had to find the unmute button among my gazillion of tabs. Yeah, same story as we had before. It just, I mean, for historical context, not everyone might know that. So very, very historical. We had a mailing list, we had an IRC channel, like 80s style, essentially. And then, of course, many people didn't like IRC or didn't like a mailing list. So we had like other grassroots community channels. And then we had a discussion at a Dev Summit, I don't know, 2 years ago. Should we actually try to endorse a specific channel? Like, let's have a forum-like channel. Let's have a like live chat channel. And the answer back then was we couldn't really agree on anything. And we wanted to kind of embrace all the channels. And that led to having more community channels listed on our Prometheus.io community page. And we wanted to see how it goes. And I think it went that way that now we have a lot of fairly busy community channels where like different fractions of the community are present. But my problem with that is that even if I personally, as an active Prometheus developer, want to ping whatever, Julian or Bartek, then I'm not even sure, is it better to ping them on IRC or on like the CNCF Slack, or what's the best way? Or should I open a GitHub issue, or should I open a GitHub discussion? Like, we got more and more stuff. And I don't think we should curb any of this. Like, it will just happen as it happens. But maybe, and that's kind of another attempt here, seeing how it goes, we should agree on a channel where let's say at least the core developers commit to be present, And this could be like, it doesn't have to be my favorite channel. Like I emphatically hate Slack for a lot of reasons, but if we agree it's Slack, I will commit to be on Slack, right? Right now, I am on Slack kind of because work forces me, and I usually try to be on IRC, but I already see how that doesn't go well. And then I'm also not encouraged because only a part of the conversation is happening there. So for me, it would be easier to commit to any one thing if we all committed that this is the one where we're all present. That's the default way to ping a developer and things like that, right? And whatever that is, right? It's just, yeah, that fragmentation will always happen inevitably, but we might soft endorse certain channels, and then it might also lead to a natural convergence, right? If everyone notices, oh, on these CNCFs, like I can always meet all the developers, then it will naturally defrag a bit, right? That's kind of my idea. And then somebody else wrote something here. DGL wrote, potentially worth considering dev channels. Matrix seems likely to lose messages on IRC. If we make Slack more official, Bartek, yes, that would be amazing. Yeah, that's everything else that's written there is what I just said, right? Yeah.
I'm one of those people who are only on Slack. And so far, I've always managed to get a hold of people there. So the CNCF Slack has been working very well for me.
Yeah, same here. I wonder if we have data, right? So for Slack, we have 12,000 people on Prometheus channel and only 700 on Prometheus Dev. And I wonder what IRC looks like, for example, right? To compare. Probably it's hard, right, for IRC to check.
I can also speak that I think Ganesh is also only on the Slack. If I
I'm
remember
not
correctly.
using IRC anymore.
There are 78 people on Prometheus Dev on Slack or on Matrix IRC. And there are on Prometheus Matrix IRC, there are 286.
Okay, so that's kind of smaller, right?
Yep.
But this doesn't tell you anything about activity. And it
Correct.
doesn't tell you about what is the
people
core
join.
group of people and everything. This needs deeper analysis than just running a few numbers on the side of a call.
But also, it's not like we need to ban IRC, right? It's maybe accepting Slack at least, or yeah, supporting Slack, mentioning Slack on community channels.
I mean,
So-
Slack is mentioned on the community page, right? It's kind of endorsed already. What I'm up for here, what I would like to see is that essentially we as the developers commit on. I mean, I try to. I mean, nobody can be everywhere, right? And I see how I struggle, like how rarely I now look at the mailing list, although that would be my preferred format for many things. But it's just like we cannot, like we are just spread thinly, and it's. Yeah, I mean, I said that before, but if we just no ban of nothing, we can still mention everything, but kind of just say the developers discuss developer stuff on this channel, right? And the developers, if they want to discuss a design, they do it in a GitHub discussion, or they do it on a mailing list, but like just one of them, right? Not having, I mean, we enabled discussions back then also because we said we want to embrace everything, we want to open all the channels. But now I'm myself unsure. Should I start a GitHub discussion? Should I start a GitHub issue? Or should I start a thread on Prometheus Dev? Or people ask me what should they do if they want to discuss something. And it's really hard to give them a recommendation.
So I am happy if we go for Slack as the main channel for the developers, at least for the kind of sync chats. But I would still keep the mailing list for like reaching broader amount of people and maybe have a bit deeper discussions. And there is next to that also the design process that Bartek just put in place a few weeks ago that we should also embrace for design talk discussions.
Yeah, I mean, I do think there is room for a like synchronous medium like a IRC or Slack, and a room for a what I call forum, like a mailing list or a GitHub discussion or anything else. Like we also had, it's not discourse, right? I don't know how that goes because I never look at that.
Discourse gets a few posts per week.
Yeah, which is more also another.
Do they get
forum,
responses?
Sometimes.
And then, of course, user support versus developer discussion. But I think for now, it would be cool to just nail how to do developer discussions.
So factually, actually, like a lot of my Prometheus discussions are happening on Slack. My one-to-one discussion with other developers, a lot of them are happening on Slack nowadays anyway. So
Yeah,
so
it seems like the reality is that all of us are reachable on Slack sooner or later.
for better or worse.
And like one of the benefits of that over IRC is that Slack tells me when I need to pay attention to it.
Matrix also does this.
I mean, every system can do everything. It just might be more or less effort. But I don't even think we would find. I think we should not aim for finding the best system and commit for it. We should just do what pragmatically seems closest. And for like direct chatting, that seems to be Slack. And maybe we could just like make this clear among us, and then also like maybe on the community side, this is the one chat way where all the developers are present. And then the other thing, yeah, that would be one thing. If we could agree on that already.
Yeah, let's scope this down, right? Like literally we have 3 lines on community page. IRC, this channel is switched to Matrix. Matrix, this room is switched to IRC, and community maintains Slack channel, which to me means one official IRC Matrix and then some second-handed Slack channel. And perhaps proposal would be to make a Slack channel, not mention community maintain, because we didn't mention that on IRC, perhaps. So maybe proposal would be from my side, just Slack channel, and then kind of replace the order and have IRC and Matrix, but maybe mention that one as a community maintain, right? What do you think?
So historically, the community maintained is there because back then we didn't use Slack within Prometheus team, but that's quite some time ago. But that's why it was community maintained, to signal that this is not where you find maintainers, which admittedly has probably flipped by now.
Exactly. Yeah.
And nonetheless, like 10 times as many, or like quite a lot of people have chosen to go there anyway. And like even for like the user channel, I choose to ask questions there every day.
One of the downsides is no matter if it's IRC or Matrix or Slack, we don't index it with Google. It's basically going into a void, and in 10 years it's going to be gone one way or the other.
I think that like for user questions, that encourages some questions more, like that reduces the barrier to entry in a way. I'm not so sure about dev discussions. I also don't know who's actually paying for the CNCF Slack.
yeah, but it's not like It's not like when you search for user questions on Google, you will find the IRC discussions anyway.
Yeah, my point is the mailing list is publicly archived, unless I'm mistaken, and the GitHub discussions and GitHub issues are. But also Björn raised his hand.
I think this is a nice line to draw between a ephemeral chat system and a more forum-like thing, that the chat thing is deliberately something that is not necessarily archived. Because it would also create a lot of noise. And I think the more forum-like mailing list, GitHub discussions, those things tend to be more like, this is something I actually want to find when I use a Google search. So maybe that's even good. And we should even mention that when we explain the community channels, that the chat is ephemeral. It's nobody knows. I mean, nobody can guarantee that it's not archived, but it's more like the other way. Like, this is most likely not for eternity, while a discussion on Git, whatever we prefer, right? I think we should also have a preferred forum-like channel where we can say, I mean, of course, we have the proposal process now, but that's when it's already getting formalized, right? If you just want to discuss something less ephemeral than chat, but before you write a design doc, right? You just want to have my like 30-year younger self would do on a mailing list. What do you do today? And if we endorse GitHub discussions, whatever, it would be fine. It just, again, I don't know even where to start. Even I don't know. And how should somebody know who is not even in touch with the community and wants to get in and then doesn't know where to express themselves? So what we could do this step by step. I mean, it sounds like we want to endorse Slack, I guess Prometheus dev plus specialized, like we have a client Golang dev channel, we have a histogram dev channel. Those channels should be endorsed as this is where you find the developers. There's also IRC, we don't ban it, right? But this is the default way to find them. And then somebody needs to create a pull request for the community page so that even people who are not here right now could still object or wordsmith. And then, yeah, I mean, we could first make this green in the thing, and then we might discuss the forum thing in the same spirit.
I would just list Prometheus and Prometheus dev in the community page and not start with the Instagram and other sub-channels maybe. But apart from that, I agree with you.
I mean, some of them, like client Golang or product specifics, maybe it's worth to mention actually, but programs are very temporary maybe.
Can they be mentioned on the repository themselves?
You're right. We already did. So maybe you're right. Yeah. Well, yeah. Okay, I'm fine. We can iterate.
I would tend to mention more rather than less, but we can move it down and we can make it smaller and such. Like, we should give you an overview of everything if you come in, but I mean, Björn's initial question and discussion is much more about what are the defaults, and I think this is a valid discussion. I'm not convinced we will have a default, but we should at least try towards a default. I think Julius was the one who argued in strongest in favor of Matrix. He's not doing a ton of work anymore, so I expect him to not have a super strong opinion either or anymore. We can also ask the wider community, but the question is, where should we?
Yeah, I mean, any objections? So far, we didn't hear anyone objecting or like having different ideas.
Björn mentioned he doesn't like Slack, so I take this as an objection to defaulting to Slack.
No. I mean, this was essentially the point that I tried to make. I would 1,000 times prefer that we all commit on Slack, where all of the developers will be reachable and developer discussion happen by default there, than the current state where like a few people sit there, a few people sit in the other corner, and it's really hard to reach someone, even though it's Slack, right? If we had this, like if whatever, what is this thing that like Mozilla uses? I don't know. Like there are so many things you could that I would prefer, but there's clearly not the momentum and the discussion also. Like if the discussion had gone now like, oh, we all hate Slack and we are only there because of work, that would be a different thing. But it seems like the inertia is there, right? I will still say publicly open source projects shouldn't use Slack, but I would still prefer that we all use Slack than everyone using something else.
I also prefer Matrix and over Slack for the same reason of open source projects should not use Slack. But we're long past that discussion in terms of user base. So I'm willing to go with the flow. Yeah,
We
Bridge would
can
be
revisit
interesting.
this if Slack turns evil.
Yeah,
Well,
but
it's owned by Salesforce, so too late.
I don't really want to maintain a bridge because this will bridge to Matrix, then bridge to IRC, and we always have a mess with the bridges, so I would avoid that.
If there were only a protocol where all the chat systems could federate each other, right? Okay, so I mean, as a consensus, we could state that the what is the I'm always missing the words. The room kind of seems to tend towards, let's just go with the flow, have developer discussions by default on the dev channel on CNCF Slack, and express this in an appropriate way on the community page, PR pending. Somebody has to create a PR, and then we can wordsmith it. And somebody has to write that.
I can give it a go. You can also, if you want, but I can also. On the point of ephemeral conversations versus persisted, do we prefer the mailing list or GitHub?
Yeah, that would be part 2 of the discussion, right? I just wanted to nail this down.
Okay, so okay. Consensus, we will overhaul the community page. We will position Slack as the main avenue for ephemeral conversation. All agreed? Anyone disagreeing? Okay. So should we continue right now with the discussion for persisted discussion?
I mean,
communication?
let's at least explore if we have like a similarly clear idea what we want to prefer. I mean, the developer mailing list has very low traffic, right? And it feels to me we have a lot of discussion happening on issues, like organically how it's happening, right? If it's not a design doc, which is a great way to discuss things, but before there is a design doc, right? Then yeah, things happening on issues, not so much on GitHub discussions. Maybe GitHub discussions would be a good middle ground between what we sometimes do in the mailing list or what we do in an issue. I don't know. Like again, I don't have a strong preference personally, because my strongest preference is that we have something like consistent, something where we converge.
So I think. Go, Matthias. Yeah.
Okay, so one observation that is like somewhat extrapolating from like a single case, but that matches kind of what I see, is that I feel like the developer's mailing list is an escalation path. The discussions don't happen there, the decisions don't happen there, but if a decision is getting lost somewhere, you email the mailing list, and then like Arthur sent the like Prometheus operator sidecar proposal there, right? And that brought me to that discussion, but then the actual discussion happened in GitHub on that PR. And I think it has, like, the mailing list has value as like, because it is low traffic, as this escalation path.
And I also want to add regarding the GitHub discussions themselves that it is really hard from a community perspective to enforce a new way of working. So we should rather try to embrace what's existing and not try to imagine something else. So I think that even if they technically will be a good middle ground, it will be really, really hard to make it adopted.
I mean, most importantly, I think if none of kind of the core members, just somebody has a proposal for the Prometheus community, semi-involved, but not at the center of the community so far, and that person opens a GitHub issue or posts to Prometheus developers or opens a GitHub discussion. And often I see those discussions just going like being seemingly ignored. And that might be because nobody feels responsible or something, but at the moment it always nags me that maybe the one person that would actually be interested in it is not following the developer mailing list or is not looking at GitHub discussions. And that would be, again, more like just have a commitment. And we could even tell this people when they onboard on Prometheus team, you have the commitment to follow the developer mailing list and to follow the developer Slack channel, right? And having that, expressing that commitment, if that's for the developer mailing list, cool, right? Then at least I know everyone is at least supposed to look at it. But I'm not sure if that's what people are doing.
Yeah, that's what I'm doing, at least. I mostly ignore Prometheus users, but I do look at like what's happening on the developers mailing list.
So should we, for now, all agree that like at least everyone is supposed to follow the Prometheus developers mailing list?
Should we put some verbiage onto the community page to basically say this is low volume, but communication of last resort?
Yeah, or just like
not touch
the overarching thing, right? It's if you have a GitHub issue, like somebody drops it, some random person has a good idea, drops an issue on, I mean, I have seen this like on Prometheus push gateway, but it's essentially about like some whatever. Should Prometheus be push-based? let's just use this as the cartoon of a topic where it's not a push gateway concern, right? This is a fundamental Prometheus concern, where I could say like this is a discussion that should be had on the developers mailing list. And now I'm saying that, I'm telling people that, but I'm not even sure if that's true. That would be cool to know that it's actually true.
Just make sure I got it right. Like, so if we have a proposal, a design doc, we post the link to the design doc in the mailing list, and the discussion happens on the mailing list and not on the design doc itself.
I mean, Bartek just left, right? I think if we have a design doc, it's relatively clear that the discussion should happen on the design doc, on the pull request for the design doc. I think this is more about before there is a design doc, right? I haven't even written a design doc because I just had this idea Prometheus should be push-based. And then I don't write a fully fledged design doc and then present it after I've spent like months writing the design doc. I just want to have a discussion. Where's the place for that discussion? Should it be a GitHub discussion? Should it be on an issue, or should it be on a mailing list, or should it be on discourse, or should it be like, if it's not, if you would not just be a Slack chat, right?
I think depending, I would say, like my gut feel is, depending on the level of formality and depth you want to have it at, or like the level of interactivity, either the CNCF Slack Prometheus dev or the Prometheus developers mailing list. And kind of as a backstop, things that keep getting, or that you feel like haven't gotten attention, go to the, like if it needs attention, developers mailing list, especially like when things from within, like from known names show up on the developers mailing list, then I'm like, oh, this is something that needs to be taken care of.
And how about like recommending that repository specific things should have on the repository, either a discussion or an issue? Like maybe that's what you wanted to say by seeing Prometheus developers as an escalation path.
Yes.
Okay. I mean, I think I got a kind of an idea. I could try to forge a pull request for the community page. And then we can see if what I write is what's our collective understanding.
Please do.
Okay. Silence is consent.
And if nobody responds on it on the PR, then escalate it to the relevant channels.
To all channels.
Just don't get into a cyclic loop.
Yeah.
Should we write down a consensus for this? Feels as if we don't need to, but happy to. Either works.
Yeah, I mean, this is a bit vague, and I would try to formalize it in a PR for the community page, but maybe we could at least catch the general spirit. Like Prometheus developers mailing list as the overarching, and I don't know, I'm not good in wordsmithing, at least not on the spot. Contributing MD. Is that referencing the mailing list as well?
I don't know, to be honest.
You just posted that, right?
Yeah, I meant that probably a good idea to add on the contributing MD about this, what we just discussed. But I don't know if it has. I'll take a look.
Consensus. For persistent conversations, we acknowledge that most communication happens on GitHub and design happens. Just a second. Consensus. For persistent conversations, we acknowledge that most communication happens through GitHub and design docs, but emphasize that Prometheus dev-ed is the communication channel of last resort. That sounds bad. Is the
Fallback channel.
The overarching.
Consensus. For persistent conversations, we acknowledge that most communication happens through GitHub and design docs, but emphasize that Prometheus dev-ed is the low volume, high signal to noise ratio communication channel everyone should be subscribed to. It's a little bit of a mouthful, but
yeah, no, I like it.
All agreed? Anyone disagreeing? Okay.
And I'll put on my long backlog to create a PR for the community page, and maybe for the contributing.md that hasn't been updated in a while, I guess.
Sounds good. Let me sneak in one point of order. Are we having next month's Dev Summit, July? I believe we usually have July and we skip August, but I'm not quite certain.
There is still June. There is still June, right?
Ooh.
Yeah, it's like you are already too far into summer mentally.
Time has lost all meaning. Okay. I take it back. Yeah, I'm mentally in June already. March 2020, March 2020 never ended, and now all of a sudden it's like 5 years later. We don't have a Gaussian, and I don't think we have any maintainers of Prometheus operator. So the discussion item would be.
We have many. In
We
fact.
have Simon.
So you have
And
maybe
yeah.
Let me just.
Okay, then I'm wrong. Sorry.
Just I have a hard stop at 6 p.m. my time, so 10 minutes from now. So I can't really continue the discussion, but maybe that's the occasion, at least to introduce a few faces. So we have Arthur, who is a Prometheus operator maintainer, Guillaume, another one just from yesterday, and Philippe also is still one of part of the team. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I would like very much to participate to the conversation, but have got no time right now for it. And I know Guillaume has some constraints too. And you could have the discussion, but we can also postpone to next Dev Summit next month, and have it like maybe the first point of order for the next one.
But just to clarify, is that a request from the Prometheus operator side to join the Prometheus project?
No,
I think it was Gautam.
Okay.
That was discussed at the last in-person Dev Summit at KubeCon. That was mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
I think, probably Gautam added that to the list.
We touched on this last time. I'm going through the previous meeting notes. Unless I misremember, I believe that Prometheus was fine with taking in Prometheus operator, and back then Prometheus operator said they prefer to stay outside the org. If that is the case, if I'm correct, and this changed, probably a case of just
when. Do you mean last month? Or?
No.
Oh, just way before.
Unless I'm mistaken, and I might be getting this wrong, but I do seem to remember that Frederick was against putting this into Prometheus org, but I forgot why and when. And I might completely be mixing stuff.
Yeah.
So
no, I mean it might have been the case, but I think like lots of things happened since then. So yeah, like I said, so at KubeCon, I don't think anybody in the Prometheus operator team is against like even the proposal. Like we can discuss it. I think it's useful and healthy to have the discussion, and just to hear why people think it would be useful, what might be the concerns from the Prometheus operator team, whatever. But I think at least having the discussion makes sense, definitely. So,
but let's leave it when you're available. I think your opinion's probably most important on the team here.
can anyone think of any downsides?
No, like slightly tangential from this, or like possibly a follow-on, is I do see a lot of people confused about like what they are actually using and like the relationship between the Helm chart, Prometheus stack, the operator, Prometheus.
Yeah.
So in a way, I see like integrating the operator, like making the operator and Prometheus more of a unit as a first step to making the whole ecosystem more understandable and more of a cohesive unit, where I think like from a user, like from our perspective, I can't actually support all of it, right? But people come to the Prometheus Slack channel with questions where I'm like, hold on, first I need to start digging into which of these stacks you are using so I can tell you which project you need to look at to find out a possible solution for your problem. And then it's on you to backtrack it through your stack, which is not a nice user experience. Like ideally we would have, I mean, ideally one, I think maybe we would have more of like one stack, but that may be unrealistic. But at least if we have it all under the Prometheus umbrella more, I think it's actually beneficial for users because they see it as one. They don't see that it's 3 different projects from 3 separate groups of people. So I'm good. I'm all in favor.
I think probably my first reaction would be that the main disadvantage is that Prometheus Operator obviously is focused on Kubernetes environments, while Prometheus is larger than just Kubernetes. And that's kind of different. You need different expertise between knowing how Prometheus works and knowing how to deploy stuff on Kubernetes. And so Prometheus Operator is the crossroad between the two. But apart from that, like I said, I see no philosophical objection to make that happening if the community feels it's a good direction.
Well, I feel that there is still one issue I would see is that the Prometheus Operator is a really big project. It is very, very active. And I am not sure how the Prometheus umbrella will react to the incorporation of such an active project next to the existing project. So that's a concern I would have, actually, because there is really a lot of activity, and I don't know if we can scale the Prometheus project from like that directly.
Yeah, probably the question would be like, would it drive synergies between the 2 main projects, or will it still be like in a way different people working on the 2 projects?
There's 2 thoughts in my head. A, we also have Prometheus community just for completeness sake, and B, I mean, we wanted to overhaul our governance anyway, so this might be the kick which we need to. Yes, I see you. This might be the kick.
I don't have the energy really. I try to, but at the moment, if anyone feels like picking that up, I'm super happy to collaborate on it. I can't do it alone.
Okay, that's good to know.
I can't drive it at the moment, at least.
Totally fine, totally fine. It's better to have a quick note than to have a long baby. Totally fine.
It's been too long already. It's been pretty much exactly a year, so I'm sorry about that.
Happens. We also have work groups for like TSDB and such. So I do see a valid approach where people are part of Prometheus team and everything, but we offload the day-to-day to the working group to not basically overload the main team with updates which are not directly relevant. The question of synergies and such is an interesting one, because do we gain anything from this? I don't know. Arthur?
There's also Bartek was they like, if Prometheus Operator moves to the Prometheus org, why not the Helm chart as well? Like they have a huge developer community as well. What makes the Prometheus operator like being selected and not the other ones?
Ben?
The Helm charts are in the Prometheus community. So it is technically
really?
part of the Prometheus org. So Helm charts are part of it now. It's just in Prometheus community and not Prometheus.
Yeah, Prometheus, yeah.
Even I've lost track of it. Do the Helm charts not use the operator?
They do both.
You can use Helm chart to deploy the operator. That's the thing. And you can use Helm chart to deploy Cube Prometheus, which again the Prometheus operator team doesn't maintain. We are kind of in the same situation than Prometheus does. Prometheus team doesn't maintain the Helm chart for deploying Prometheus. Yeah.
There's probably a third chart with only Prometheus and
yes.
nothing else.
Yeah. I'm sorry, I'll have to drop, but I think we can maybe have to continue the discussion next month, and maybe during that time people will have time to think about it and come with maybe new questions or new ideas.
Yeah, I think if some of the Prometheus operator maintainers could also ask the community if they can join the Dev Summit, this would be great.
Yeah. Thank you all. See you.
Thanks.
Should we have a 5-minute break?
Yes.
Okay, then see you in 5. So,
I tried to like quickly summarize the last discussion into the notes. Please correct it if I got it wrong.
just a moment. Yeah,
We should just have ChatGPT take notes for us.
I activated the transcription service, which is new. I also realized I forgot to upload the last Dev Summit to the March one to YouTube. And I've been doing this on the side in the background, and it's taking ages. So I presume that a lot of compute is currently being used for BART. Just one. What's been saying it? Okay. Done. Brian couldn't make it. He has a thing with his wife. Should we talk about TLS handling into exporter toolkit? I mean, we do have a Ben. Is a Ben here again, or is a Ben absent?
I'm here.
Should we talk about extracting TLS handling to more neutral place than exporter toolkit?
Yeah, toolkit would be good.
Brian said Ben exported toolkit. I think he means more into a more generic thing. Okay, maybe we actually need a Brian to talk through
Explain
this.
what the problem is.
Okay, let me see. What is the oldest with the most votes then? Brian Simon. Josh, query screenshots and notification in the alert manager. Josh, are you back? I'll take this as a no. Next one. Brian, add a limit parameter to AP1 series, AP labels, blah, 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 but that's Brian. That's also Brian. Björn, vulnerability report procedure.
Yeah. Did you? Sorry, that's there. Okay. Let me remember what I thought. Okay. So yeah, that was two triggers for this. The one was that GitHub has private vulnerability reporting feature. I don't know if that was silently introduced or we deliberately activated it, but it's active on most or if not all of the repositories, and some people are using it. But we also have the official way that is documented on our Prometheus.io page, which is mail Prometheus team. I mean, probably nothing wrong being open to everything, but it feels a bit inconsistent. And maybe we have a preference, and then we could switch off this feature, or we could change the instructions to use the GitHub feature. And the other trigger was that we had this fairly well worked out vulnerability report from, like, I guess it was a company. Don't remember the name. It's also like, I just saw that there were like 3 reports. Different people were like most qualified for that, but they responded really slowly. And I guess it was a really bad experience for the reporters. Most of the reported things weren't that bad in the end, right? But they could have been really bad. And it feels to me we have no Like we have no default person that feels responsible. And I think security is also inherently is that you think you are not qualified because it's such a sensitive issue, and then nobody responds. And I mean, I was even wondering if we should try to find a company sponsoring a person that just feels responsible for all security reports, even if they just delegate stuff, but to not have this thing where this report hangs like somewhere in the air for like months and nobody responds to it.
Yeah, I agree that the Prometheus team mailing list, or like my take is the Prometheus team mailing list is not working very well for actually following up. It's working great for receiving reports, but it's not working great for following up. Like we tend to start the discussion and discuss among ourselves whether this is important or not, but then we don't consistently actually write back to the reporter, even like acknowledging that yes, we've gotten this, we're discussing it, or the discussion seeps into the sand, and we never really close it. We don't. Email does not make it easy to keep track of what is still open and what needs closing out. I don't know if the GitHub thing works better, especially because I've seen people like email about, hey, I filed this GitHub thing, and then I was like, wait, should I have seen the GitHub thing? I guess I did not. Or I guess that got lost in the sea of GitHub notifications.
I mean, I didn't know about that until something flew by and I realized, oh, wait a second, first I thought, damn, somebody filed something potentially serious in an openly visible issue. And then I realized, oh no, this is actually not visible because it was filed through this feature that I discovered in that moment. So maybe it would help if we first made this the official way of reporting security incidents, and then make all the repository maintainers aware that their repository has this feature and this is the way to handle security reports. Maybe, I don't know.
I'm afraid repository maintainers is not like, as a repository maintainer, I am not responsive enough to be the only one who gets these notifications. I think like I really would like, I really like the idea if we can somehow get that funded to have like a small select group of people, or like one person who just feels responsible for managing the security reports and nagging others where necessary.
Yeah, also like somebody familiar with CVE procedures, like do it, what's the correct threshold? I mean, I see how this is done at Grafana for Grafana own projects, which is, it feels to me super well greased and nicely done, and in the Prometheus space, it feels very makeshift.
So we have already published multiple CVEs from the Prometheus server project because, well, the GitHub security stuff makes it easy. It also enables you to create private forks, which are really useful, temporary forks. So disabling that function entirely, I would not do it, but yeah, I also feel like we should also triage those issues that we get, but yeah, I receive those emails, but most of the time it's just like the usual stuff like, yeah, some dependencies are not up to date, but we don't even use the features, right? So it takes a lot of time to respond to those ones, and even before you actually report them, you are still linked to the correct security policy, which is to mail the Prometheus team and not to mail about the scanners if they are false positives.
Yeah, so, but yeah. I mean, I'm not so concerned about those. If they get not the perfect treatment, that's fine. But this example, what was that?
Yeah.
Right. But we had like, there were 3 issues. It was really well researched with,
yeah.
Like, I mean, even though then a lot was more like, that's not a big deal, but it was researched in a way that we wanted to be researched. And we responded really like not like inappropriately, I would say. I mean, should we ask around our various employers if they want to fund somebody who's actually just like has security as their work routine and will also keep track of those things in Prometheus land? I mean, I don't know how realistic that is that we get this, but
we could in theory ask CNCF if they have any. I mean, at the end of the day, you need someone who can assess the thing.
Yeah, I think you need to have some familiarity like with Prometheus as a project to be able to judge like, oh, this is a thing, like this is a Node.js issue, but like it's in Prometheus UI, this is probably not actually affecting users, right? You need to know what it's about a little bit. I agree. Like if we can at least, I would love to at least ask CNCF like if they have a recommendation how we can make this better, if they have any tools that can help us manage this more or resources.
Their recommendation is going to be the same as last time, because I had this conversation a few times. It's basically ask tag security. Back then, tag security didn't have anything which we could use. Maybe that changed. I don't know. Taking a step back, is the main concern us not seeing notifications, or is the main concern us not having the bandwidth to go through all of them?
Yeah, not replying correctly.
Yeah, I think for me the concern is with following up consistently, like knowing, like I see the emails and I'm like, it's probably not a big deal, but I also don't have the energy right now, or like someone, like we start discussing, we figure out, oh, it's actually not a big deal, but then we don't send the email back, or we figure out, oh yeah, actually we should do something about it, and then we don't, like we CC the maintainer for that repository, but then there is no mechanism that like backstops if they don't immediately pick it up.
Stupid idea. If we export this data, we can ingest it into a Prometheus and write alerts and basically have SLOs on our own reaction time.
How would we export it from a mailing list?
How many hours do you have in one day?
And who I mean, I think
GitHub.
The problem is to find the person that is actually qualified to deal with that issue and has bandwidth. And I think there is no tooling that can help with that. You just need a person that harasses people until they agree to do something about it.
I mean, I think tooling can help to some extent by like giving us a place to have a backlog of what still needs to be taken care of, or like different states for that. But yeah, in the end, someone needs to be, like, in the end, it needs a human.
Yeah, or just like I mean, I have so little bandwidth that dealing with the security issues would mean I now have to drop stuff that is my core job right now, right? That's in my OKRs and everything. And nobody has in their OKRs respond to Prometheus security features in a day. And that's maybe, yeah, it depends.
Sorry, we need to read out the question because else people don't know.
Okay, the question was, what's the average volume of these issues? And I think it's like valuable issues are pretty rare, and then there's a lot of just noisy issues. And I think we at least need to respond in some way to all of them, but I think the noisy ones are also easy to respond to, right? And that even might happen more often. Like this one issue that triggered, this was one of those two triggers here, that was actually a well-done issue that actually needed proper research. And I kind of tried to find the people who could do, but then the people who were identified took, like, it was Simon for Alert Manager, took a long time, Brian for the regex stuff. And he twice said, like, I missed that email, which I don't know if you can really miss an email on Prometheus team twice. It sounds more like he had a ton of stuff on his list to do, and then it just fell off because, again, nobody has on their OKRs respond to Prometheus security issues in a day or something.
Yeah, I mean, on the security scanner noise, I would also say if we weren't capacity constrained on actually like responding to these things, I would love for us to be much more accepting and saying, okay, like ideally, like in an absolutely ideal world, right? We would accept any and all reports from users and then sort through them efficiently. We've heard about this one before and we already determined it's not a big deal. We see this one, we acknowledge it, but it doesn't affect a code path that we think. Like I see that as just for capacity reasons, we're trying to push that responsibility onto the reporter. I don't think that is a good state. Like, I don't think we should be doing that necessarily. If something matches in our repositories, we ought to, as like I would love it if we had the capacity or the tooling to deal with that. And that tooling might include, yes, we've seen this issue for this repository. We've already determined that it is not a big deal. Yeah, there are services that do that, but I don't have a ton of experience with like that do this pre-filtering. But I don't know how much work it is to set those up and whether anyone would sponsor that.
But again, I mean, personally, I think my most serious concern is not about the noisy things, and I mean that would be nice to respond in a friendlier way. But what I'm really concerned about is the minority of substantial reports, right? And for example, for that one issue, there was 3 reports. The one was, I think, about the redirect, which I think the proper response would be to write in the documentation where you can configure this behavior. The default behavior is good in most cases, but it allows this specific attack. If you're in a situation where this is a problem, disable this feature, right? But I think we haven't done this yet, right? So we haven't really followed up to the first response. The other one was the alert manager thing, and Simon did something. I don't really follow up what's happening in alert manager land. Josh, perhaps you know if that's already solved. I think the answer was we need V2 of the API and should finally switch off V1. But I don't know, like haven't even seen what the follow-up was, and the reporter probably has the idea the Prometheus people just don't care. And the third one was the regular expression thing. And I think, I mean, I trust Brian that he's doing the right thing, but he hasn't even explained it in a way that I'm satisfied. And it will probably again feel like some passive-aggressive response that they don't want to do anything. Although I think factually the response is correct. This should be something done in the upstream Go library, right? But it doesn't feel to me it was explained properly, and it is a much more involved explanation than you are running into false positive or security scanner, and with our next release we will have removed this dependency. The explanation there is much tough, like it's a real discussion among security experts, and many of us aren't security experts, right? And as this is where I'm more concerned, I would tackle that first, and then I would, as a secondary thought, I would think about how can we make reporters of noisy reports happier.
Yeah, and sorry for not asking the question originally out loud for the recording. I'm just wondering, so we in Red Hat, like we have a security team and we regularly get CVEs for Prometheus and other monitoring components. I wonder if there isn't a way to, and I imagine like, Google and whoever uses Prometheus and participates in this community has a similar setup. Is there maybe a way to leverage this work where people actually have this, as Björn said, on their OKRs to follow up on these issues, but leverage this for the upstream community.
If there's a way, absolutely 100% yes. I mean, we would need to hand off communication and such, or to include people in communication, but more hands would be very good.
Personally, if Red Hat says my opinion is, if Red Hat says we will handle this, like we will handle security reports for Prometheus and escalate to the team as necessary, we can create a security@prometheus.io email tomorrow, and I would love it.
Yeah, I mean, obviously I can't promise anything, but I'd be happy to bring this up with the team and see if we can at least improve the current situation.
Awesome, that is wonderful.
We can't really do a consensus here. So we just,
I mean,
just follow up.
One thing we can do is check what I just stated as my opinion. Like, is that in line with what other people are thinking, or would anyone be feel weird about it if Red Hat just takes this over?
I mean, I would love to have somebody who is a 100% security expert and has perhaps 20% familiarity with Prometheus. That would fill a huge gap that we have, because we are all 100% Prometheus and maybe 10%. I mean, some of us might be better than that, but I'm definitely just 10% a security person and can handle this properly. Plus, none of us has this really on their worksheet as you expect to take 10% of your work time to handle security issues.
It would also just speed things up, even if they're not familiar with Prometheus at all, more or less, but they could still help with the assessment and discussion just by having someone who knows what they're talking about and who knows the topic. That would already be quite helpful, I feel.
I mean, again, using this case as an example, where when the outcome is this is actually bug in the upstream Go library, then this would have been we needed a Go expert, right, to find this, to find out about this, not necessarily a Prometheus expert, which is again something where we might not even be qualified.
Yeah, this is where I think Red Hat might actually have exactly the right mix of skills to handle this well, and probably has customers that care about this anyway. So yeah. I would love it. Like I would find it a really good solution. And I mean, it's not like we wouldn't be handling it, like we would just absolve ourselves of all responsibility, right? It's not necessarily on whoever handles these reports to fix everything. It's just that right. I think we do need someone to manage the process around this better, because we're not very good at it as a team.
Yeah, that's my thinking, and that is very much my personal opinion, that Red Hat has an interest in this, and they have the sort of expertise and established processes. So might as well be worth exploring if there's something this sort of institutional stakeholder can do here. And again, no promises. I'll bring it up with them and see what they say.
Okay, thank you. Let's write down a note.
Just coming back to this technical thing, should we continue to exclusively advertise security reports via Prometheus team, or should we?
Yes, I think that's good. people can still file those GitHub thingies. There's just no SL. Can we keep the feature for ourselves but prevent others from filing them?
I don't think so. Richie.
I'm pretty certain we can have it private only.
Then let's do that.
I very strongly feel that if we leave it open for the public, then we must consider it a primary means of communication. I don't have a super strong opinion on which we use, but I have a very strong opinion that if we offer a way to give security reports, it must be a well-covered one.
My gut feeling is also we should have one preferred way and also point people to it. And I feel, but I haven't explored this enough, but it feels to me using the GitHub thing would be much better than using this Prometheus team thing. But yeah, that's not a qualifier.
I mean, we could do that. Is there a way we could aggregate all of these security reports across the Prometheus and Prometheus community org somehow? Like, could we somehow get a notification when something is filed against the memcached exporter?
We can, in theory, have a role account and put this role account onto all the things, but this will get messy and we'll also get other email which we don't want to get.
I wonder if we can then filter it down somehow. Yeah, this might be very tricky to do, but like that would be kind of my thing. On the other side is if we only if we want to treat these reports from on individual repositories with priority, then more than just the maintainer of that repository needs to see them. Because like my maintainer activity is intermittent enough to not be good enough for security. It's good enough for bug reports, but it's not good enough for security issues. And we can't expect everyone who maintains a repository to be on it that much all the time. We all take vacation at some point. And like the status quo is kind of that we can, it's not nice, but we can say, well, you didn't follow our process. So like, we're not liable if you filed it there and we didn't see it. It's not a great experience, and we should definitely be better than that. And having it open but not actually reading it is probably worse than closing it. Or it is worse than closing it.
I clicked around on the site. I do believe we cannot have organization level security reports. They must be repository level. I'm also trying to see if we can, so for those who don't know, if you create okay. I'm basically clicking around the Grafana org because we're using this quite a bit. We can enable and disable vulnerability reporting, and distinct from this, we can create a draft security advisory, and from this we automatically get a new private clone of the repository, which is only available to maintainers or write or admin or whatever level of specific repository. We can also get a CVE from GitHub, though that takes a little bit of time sometimes, but Grafana is now also assigning authority or whatever the name is, so push comes to shove, we can also just use Grafana's. So we can disable this, but we can still have a security policy both in the specific repositories. And what we can also do, I'll drop this in chat and I'll also drop it in the meeting notes. There's also something which, at least amongst established security researchers, is well known, and that is .wellknown/security.txt. It still doesn't tell us what we should be doing.
Then, like, for the immediate things we can do immediately, I would suggest that we close the public vulnerability reporting, at least for anything other than Prometheus, because I don't believe we can consistently enough monitor those. And we do, like, we use every channel we can to publish the official reporting procedure such as it is right now. And that's kind of separately, then we can work on improving that reporting procedure. I do wonder if we could, if it would be useful to have to change what we ask people to report to something like security@prometheus.io, which we can right now just funnel straight into Prometheus team and later point somewhere else. That would be a very easy thing to do in our Google org. I can click that email together in 5 minutes, in 2 minutes. It wouldn't change anything how we receive them. It would just change what email we present as the contact point.
It would actually change something. It would allow us to, for example, onboard Red Hat security team or trusted people onto this list without having to add them to Prometheus team.
Exactly. Yeah. It lays the ground for that as well.
Consensus. We will disable private security reporting through GitHub. We will create an analog to grafana.com/wellknown/security.txt. We will create a security@prometheus.io, potentially adding e.g. Red Hat security people on top of Prometheus team. It also might mean we need to change the governance as to onboarding procedure, but that's not a huge concern. Just noting it that this might happen. All agreed? Anyone disagreeing?
Oh no, I mean, I would just make that email straight up forward to the Prometheus team group. We don't need to explicitly add anyone to that email.
Makes replying a little bit harder, but we can figure this out as we go. With the basics, all agreed? Anyone disagreeing? Josh, Julian?
Which again, like if we had a person that is just doing security as their main job, they would now tell us if that's a good idea or just stupid.
I used to do vulnerability handling for all of Grafana Labs. I like it.
Okay, and that already gives me some peace of mind.
Josh?
Yeah, maybe this has been asked, but I just want to know because I've been a little bit distracted. Sorry about that. Does the CNCF have any sort of process around this, or no? Anything? No.
No. We get an audit every now and then, but ongoing things like these are not not handled by CNCF. I mean, one thing which we could do, we could ask Tag Security if they have any volunteers, any trusted volunteers who would be willing to join this. But I would also be wary of basically onboarding everyone who even walks by. I would much prefer to have 1 or 2 people who are really on it, rather than like 1,000 people who are like, yeah, sure, whatever, we can try and take a look, or maybe not.
I'm just clicking through the group creation now. Is it okay if anyone who has a Prometheus.io email address can see this group? Is there anyone who has Prometheus.io emails who shouldn't see this?
Don't, with security stuff, make it explicit adding. Make it explicit opt-in or explicit allow explicit.
We can change it
Default.
later.
Yeah. It's also an implementation detail, but please don't.
Yep.
Then Augustine left rework of the Alert Manager UI. I mean, we can. Simon left. We can also do, Josh, with introduce a new set of APIs with pagination for consuming alert rule state. Full disclosure, this has been added today. As such, it doesn't exist, but it already has 3 votes, and we are through backlog of 3 vote stuff, which we can talk through. So let's do it. Josh, floor is yours.
Yeah, I cannot see the list of participants really quick because I wanted to see if Julius and Julian, which are usually the ones that have interest in the API, but maybe others do, so I'm going to say it anyways. Basically, the current UI for consuming rule state. So I'm talking about when your alert rule was last evaluated, or when your alert rule is going to be evaluated next, or how long that it took. It's not suitable for consuming large number of alert rules because it's just one single page. Information is loaded all at once, and then you resort to just control everything around the page to try and understand that. I've seen a lot of pain from customers on our side that have probably close to 60,000 rules. And even on our largest Prometheus setup that has, I don't know, roughly 8,000-9,000 of alerts, it's a pain to be able to consume it. So we're kind of want to propose a revamp, not necessarily, and by a revamp, I mean just like crafting a new experience, but not necessarily proposing a breaking change to the current APIs of the current set of endpoints. It's all described in the issue, but we're basically proposing about adding 3 new endpoints that are a little bit more RESTful, so you'll be able to query, hey, give me all the alert rules of a file, which we consider a namespace in other platforms, or give me all the alerts that are in a rule group, and it'll be able to just filter down by that list, and baking this into the Prometheus UI to use the new set of APIs as well. So it's not just, let's just add the APIs and call it a day. It's also about revamping the UI in Prometheus so that you can do a more nested approach. That's all I got.
Silence is agreement. We don't really have quorum anymore.
So the thing is that, well, I did read the proposal. I did not react to it yet, but there was a proposal which is also linked. I would not add a new namespace concept into the Prometheus server itself. But I also know that there was also, Bartek was following up on that, GitHub pull request to add label matcher support to the rules API, which could also help with this. And I don't know if that has been on your radar as well.
I've never seen that. Can you link it, please?
Yes, I will link it in the documentation, in the GitHub, in the document, but also in the chat. which we should also maybe follow up and see how that can go with the other topics. My main issue was that, well, because rules are highly dynamic and we might also want to have pagination on the targets, that we should not really rely on page numbers. If you have 60,000 rules, you probably have it also very dynamic, so not really relying on page numbers, but yeah, some kind of filtering would be nice. We have solved that issue partially with the targets, because now you can filter for a job and it's used by the UI actually. But yeah, so my only objections to this is that I think we should avoid page numbers. And with the other proposal, I think we should not bring a namespace concept into Prometheus rules, because that would be very confusing, because it's a very generic term, which is also used in Kubernetes. So, but and in Prometheus we generally rely on rules by the group name and the file name, and I think, yeah, adding a filter for that would make a lot of sense, for example, or adding a filter is the label values might also work. So I am more like we should filter, but like the pagination, I don't know how we can do that. If you have 60,000 rules, it will probably be very dynamic and you might miss some rules if you have pagination.
The pagination thing, it's orthogonal to what we're proposing to a certain extent. It has to do with what we're proposing because we would need to include pagination, but I don't want to mix the two, right? So like, let's try and take a step back to talk about one thing at a time. Regarding the pagination bit, is like, yeah, all the endpoints to a certain extent. Go ahead, Richie. Do you want to say something, Richie, before I continue?
Oh, sorry. Okay. If you have a hash and you just have hash ranges instead of pages in your pagination, like that's the usual trick to do absolutes. I mean, the usual trick to do absolutes is to start from 1 and not from the highest number, which is a common mistake these days in UI. But if we just hash stuff and just say this slice, done.
I think that's kind of what's been proposed with but this is done by another group, that proposal in particular. But I think that's kind of what's been proposed, which you use a token, which is a hash of the page that you're seeing, and then moving forwards or backwards, depending on where you are from there. And I agree. To what extent, to a certain extent, I agree with that proposal, but it's kind of orthogonal to what I am proposing. So I just want to make that clear. And by orthogonal, I mean that it's not necessarily included, but I think it's needed, right? So ideally, we would do both at the same time and make sure it's included on the new set of APIs that I'm also proposing to add. So with that, I want to clarify that, right? It's like, I think, yes, we should do the pagination in the way that you have suggested, right? I see no concerns with that. If we were to agree to that, it's like I would be happy, even though that work's not being proposed by me. It's being proposed by someone else, which I don't see it in the consensus. So we could probably just take that and write into the issue that we will have some consensus on that pagination. But what I'm proposing is, as I said, slightly different. Is being able to see the data in a different way to the way that we see it today. So right now, when you query the endpoint, it's just like, give me all the information at once, and even with pagination, you'll be able to see a slice of all the information at once, right? So like one argument to that is that, let's say that you have one single rule on the first page that has, I don't know, 40,000, 50,000 instances, because it's monitoring, I don't know, 50,000 things, right? Then pagination doesn't save you on that occasion, because that will still be on the first page and you will still output those 150,000 things at once, because it's nested within the rule itself. So the solution that we are proposing with the new set of APIs is that it's not being able to see all the information all at once, but see it gradually, right? So you first get rule group information, like when did it last evaluate, just the rule group name, none of the rules in it. Then you can actually request the alerts of the rule group by going to API-v1/rule groups/rule group name, and then that will be able to show you all the alerts itself. And then if you go to rule group 1 file 1/rule group 1, it'll be able to show you all of the alerts under instances of that particular rule group, which is a slightly different problem.
Yeah, it makes sense to me.
Sorry, I just had a quick question. Like, if we are going to add the pagination to the new APIs, how about the old APIs? Are we planning to deprecate the old APIs when we have the new APIs available? Because like the old APIs can cause a problem on server side if no pagination support, but the people who is using it has a bunch of alerts or rules.
So we do not depreciate APIs in Prometheus server itself until we reach Prometheus 3.0, but it is fine to add parameters that would filter the result of get a slightly different output, and it is also fine to add extra fields to the existing output. So if you want to add a counter for the number of targets affected, that can be added. So we can always add new fields and add parameters that would modify the output. But the actual API, we have it under the stability guarantees of Prometheus. We cannot change it within the 2.0 releases of Prometheus.
I see. So, Josh put two proposal actually. So, the second proposal, I proposed, is more about how do we deal with the original API, so that since we don't deprecate the old APIs, we need to protect our service in the old API as well. So that proposal is mainly on how do we make sure the customer call won't cause problem our old APIs. In that proposal, in that proposal, we proposed to add pagination on the rule group level, but I believe that's too complex, too much to do, because we are going to add the pagination on the new APIs. I feel like probably the old API we can do simple stuff to add max items to return, like max rules to return, max alert to return. I wonder if that makes sense or not.
I think it would be my preference if we add the pagination to the old API as well, even if it's a little bit more complex, yeah. Because whatever lessons we learn from that, we can just carry onwards into the new APIs anyways. So I think that would be my preference to have it on both and not deprecate, just completely forget about the old API, which I know that things like Pint, which is a tool built by Cloudflare, I believe, uses the old API in order to be able to consume this rule data. So I think it's not just us, right? It's not just the Thanos and Mimirs, the Cortex that's used that have some compatibility with this API, and we might just be breaking it by not providing any sort of support for it. So I would rather do it.
For the old APIs, the problem is it's nested. So I think pagination on rule groups and then add the max item size to the construct under the rule group will make it cleaner. I don't think we really need to do pagination of pagination. It's
fair.
Okay.
But yeah, I don't know. So that's slightly different from what's being proposed, right? And I suggest then at that point that we adjust the proposal to match that, if we think that that's going to be a simpler solution to approach to that, and then discuss that one individually.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah. But I think that for the new endpoints, we definitely want the same thing that we get for the old endpoints in terms of limiting the number of items that you can output at once, regardless of whenever you see all the information at once or not, because they have slightly different problems, right?
Yes.
So yes, and where I'm hearing, there's nothing stopping us from adding the PR that you just linked me from executing label matchers on rules. I think this would actually be a pretty cool thing to add to the old API. It's still not enough for the use cases where you have a lot of alert rules, a lot of alert instances is how we call them in Grafana world, right? Which is like when you have a rule, then the number of series that get output from an alert, we call them alert instances in Grafana world. But still doesn't solve the problem of a lot of instances for a single rule. So yeah, it's like, yes to, I can happily volunteer to review, 10.194, because I think this is worth adding. I think we need to revisit the pagination proposal. Chige, if you're saying we're going to do a limit as opposed to proper pagination. And then I feel like we can agree to carry onward with the new set of APIs that we are proposing, if that's what I'm hearing.
Are we concerned that adding a limit is like a breaking change, or is that okay? It's just self-defense.
We do it the other way around.
Yeah. If you introduce it and it doesn't trigger by default, it's not breaking.
Yeah.
Easy.
We did that as a stopgap in Grafana. Basically, to that set of APIs, we did the same thing. We introduced it in a non-breaking change way by just adding limit. That you don't use it, you get everything by default.
Okay.
But it doesn't result, sorry, last thing, it doesn't result in a nice experience, right? Which is why I don't want the same thing for Prometheus. I want something a little bit more refined, which is what the new APIs are proposing.
Given that we are almost at time, usual consensus for design doc.
Say that again?
Should we have the consensus for design doc and you just come back when you have it?
I thought that the issue was kind of that, because it's pretty detailed, including how the API endpoints look like. But maybe we should put it in a design doc format for everyone's consumption. Yeah.
I mean, the thing is, we won't get consensus with the amount of people which we have and the time which we have, and we can also just leave it open and continue here next time. That's also fine.
Okay. Well, let's do that. Let's do that.
Okay. Okay.
Cool.
Then I make a note. Okay.
I think what we did just now and get a temperature check was a good thing to do. So I'll take it.
Temperature check. New APIs, yay. Limit offset pagination, nay.
So, consensus. We will continue this discussion next time.
Okay.
Really easy. I feel confident making this the reduced amount of people. Okay, I'll copy stuff back up and see you in a month at the latest.
Bye, everyone. Lovely seeing you.
Bye.